All right, welcome back to the channel, subscribers. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And I fucked this up again. All right, Devin Haney is not letting Vasyl Lomachenko off the hook. He wants that fight, and he's asking the public to put pressure on Lomachenko to make that fight happen, and my pleasure. I have no problem helping you out with that, young man. Let's talk about that and why Lomachenko should not be allowed to slide up out this fight or let Bob Arum slide Lomachenko out this fight in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel, subscribers. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe and hit that bell icon. Now, also, thank you to my chief communities of supporters, the live stream community. Thank you guys so much for coming Monday through Fridays and Sunday OG Boxing Talk with myself, Kurt Sugar, Blood Boxing, and KQKC Boxing. And thank you so much to my Patreons. You guys are really the best. I appreciate you guys so much. Please hit me in the comment section with some new topics that you want me to cover. Now, let's get into this. Vasyl Lomachenko should not be allowed to slide out of a fight with Devin Haney, man. Okay? Lomachenko needs to fight Devin Haney. Period. And I don't want to hear none of this. He's too small, or you know, who has Devin Haney beaten? Who has he fought? Lomachenko really needs to go back down in weight. None of that nonsense. None of that nonsense. Devin Haney has done exactly what Devin Haney needs to do to get that fight with Vasyl Lomachenko, but I have a suspicion that Bob Arum and those guys don't want that smoke because that's a bad matchup for Vasyl Lomachenko, and I'm going to talk to you about exactly why that is and what the mechanisms are that allow these people to do this nonsense. And we're going to get into, as a result, with some basic fundamental things that are jacked up about the sport, the way that the sport of boxing is organized. Now, Devin Haney, definitely one of the top young fighters in the boxing world. This cat has got tremendous hand speed. He's got tremendous skill. He's got tremendous foot speed, footwork. The kid has got a lot of heart. He's got a solid amount of power. This kid very much could be the real deal. But more important than any of that is that he is Vasyl Lomachenko's mandatory. Now, we know Bob Arum doesn't really like that term, doesn't really like mandatories. Why should we, specifically what he said about mandatories, this is Bob Arum talking to IFL TV, was that, you know, we need to get into a point in boxing where champions really don't need to fight mandatories because you wind up wasting a lot of time fighting mandatories. These guys aren't, you know, they're not on the right level to compete with some of these fighters, some of these big stars in boxing like Canelo Alvarez. I can only assume he meant Lomachenko. Maybe he meant Terrence Crawford. Maybe. He doesn't really give a lot of love to Terrence Crawford very often, but I'll chuck Terrence Crawford in there for him because if he's saying that about those guys, he should be saying it about Terrence Crawford. He says we shouldn't have mandatories or they should be able to skip out of that. Now, interestingly enough, that is one of the things that the WBC kind of did when it brought up this franchise champion nonsense. You got a champion who doesn't have any mandatory obligations. And he doesn't have to even fight at his own weight class. He can go fight and defend against, he can go fight and fight people in multiple weight classes and never put his belt on the line. With this franchise champion thing, they can lose to somebody and that person that beats the franchise champion doesn't win the franchise championship. He becomes a mandatory challenger to the guy with the regular belt. All kind of craziness. But that's exactly what Bob Arum is asking for. Is a champion that does not have to defend against mandatories. But here's the thing. Every once in a while you get in with a mandatory and that mandatory will beat you. There are reasons why these guys don't want to fight a lot of these mandatories. Let's take, for example, Sergey Devenchenko, the former mandatory for Gennady Golovkin, that Gennady Golovkin would not fight, that Canelo Alvarez would not fight. He gets in the ring with Gennady Golovkin when Gennady Golovkin essentially doesn't have a choice if he wants to be a champion, because who's he going to fight to become a champion? He's either got to fight Demetrius Andrade or he's got to fight Jamal Charlo. So no, Gennady Golovkin decides to take the path of least resistance. In my opinion, that's the path of least resistance, and I think that reasonable boxing fans would say that that's the path of least resistance. Sergey Devenchenko had lost to Daniel Jacobs, and Sergey Devenchenko is a very good fighter. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's on the same level of fighter as Jamal Charlo is, of talent as Jamal Charlo or Demetrius or Boo Boo Andrade. So he takes a path of least resistance. What happens when he gets in there? He almost loses. He gets beat up and almost loses. He won the fight. I'll give him credit for having won the fight, but do you think that that's a fight that shouldn't have happened? Before, when Devenchenko, certain people that were supporters of Gennady Golovkin acted as if the Sergey Devenchenko fight, when he was his mandatory for the IBF title, was a waste of time. But as we see when the fight actually happens, it's not a waste of time. Fight mandatories. You see, Anthony Joshua didn't fight a mandatory in Andy Ruiz, but people didn't think, not very many people thought, some people did think that Andy Ruiz could beat Anthony Joshua, but not a lot of people did. But he comes in there as a last minute replacement and he beats Anthony Joshua handily. There's mandatories for a reason. So what does this have to do with Vasyl Lomachenko? Devin Haney is his mandatory. And it shouldn't be a matter of all of this, what Bob Arum says is, he's going to have to fight some more people. He's going to have to fight some people. He's not quite ready yet. Waiting for Bob Arum, man. With Bob Arum, he's never going to be ready. He'll never be ready. And the more ready that Devin Haney actually becomes, the less ready Bob Arum is going to be to make that fight. Because Bob Arum doesn't have Devin Haney signed to him. What was the excuses? I don't recall the excuses, but do you remember when Terrence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao were still fighting what we're fighting? Manny Pacquiao was at a weight class above, I do believe, fighting at 147 when he was with Top Rank, and Terrence Crawford was still at 140, at a point at 135. Bob Arum wouldn't make that fight. Why? Because Bob Arum, and this is Bob Arum saying, because Bob Arum knew what would happen if Terrence Crawford fought Manny Pacquiao. Terrence Crawford was going to beat Manny Pacquiao. So he didn't want to make the fight because he was like, nah, I'm going to lose Manny Pacquiao. I believe that he could very well be doing the same thing with Devin Haney. Devin Haney is definitely a threat to Vasyl Lomachenko. I've said this in videos before and I'm going to say it now. The reason he's a threat is because of his foot speed. Vasyl Lomachenko has a lot of skills. He's got a lot of talent. Tremendous foot speed is not one of them. And I'm not talking about good, fast foot work, right? I'm not talking about pivoting angles very quick, pivoting this way, pivoting that way. That's at least the way that I think of that, that's footwork. And Vasyl Lomachenko has excellent footwork. Foot speed, on the other hand, which is getting out of the way, moving quickly to the left, quickly to the right, getting on your bicycle, moving on your bicycle, that's something different. The perfect example of somebody that has people that have tremendously quick footwork versus people that have really tremendous foot speed would be tremendously quick footwork for Mike Tyson. Tremendously quick fast foot speed, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, when he was younger in the 70s, if you watch him fight like Cleveland Williams or Ernie Terrell or shoot anybody, Sonny Liston, Floyd Patterson, you can see that he moves so fast on the outside that nobody can get in there, set their feet, and start throwing punches with him. Because by the time they do, he's literally gone. His ability to move back 2 steps, move to the left, move to the right, and get all the way out of range was tremendous. And that's what Devin Haney has. And that's something that Vasyl Lomachenko does not have. Or at least I've not seen it. I've seen people just move away from Vasyl Lomachenko, and Vasyl Lomachenko didn't just move up right there with him. He's moving in, he's walking him, he might walk him down, but he doesn't have the ability just to get there with him. And if Devin Haney doesn't want to be there, Devin Haney's not going to be there. But regardless, Devin Haney, the number one reason Devin Haney should get that fight is because Devin Haney's their mandatory. We got a problem in boxing with people ducking and trying to get up out of these mandatory fights. Mandatory fights are there for a reason. And it is to ensure that top fighters get a chance to fight for those belts. And Devin Haney has already done everything he needs to do, according to the WBC, to be able to fight for their belt, and the WBC should hold Vasyl Lomachenko responsible for that, just like the IBF would, because the IBF would do that. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section, and with that, I'm out. Peace.